Okay, we're early. What? Oh my God! We're early. It's 2:29. We decided to go ahead and get on to give a chance for people to get on to the show. Chit-Chattin with Becca is live for our very first episode. And I'm so excited. I can't hardly stand myself. So I need to find some intro music because you never know if Facebook is gonna mute you because your music in the background may not be what you can play. So we'll figure that out. But it's the first episode, and I'm very, very, very excited. And we've got a lot of stuff going on in our episode today. We're going to do some chit-chatting with some folks, and then we have the lovely Aimee Francis. And we're going to be discussing, disgusting. We're not going to be disgusting. We're going to be discussing Friday the 13th, the series, what worked, what didn't work, what was fun, what was stupid, was it scary? So that's going to be fun. So we'll do that. But first of all, we're going to check and see if we've got a couple of fun things that we're going to do. So we're going to have a couple of quick guest appearances. So let's do this. I love postcards. I love mail. So if you send a postcard in to the show, specifically to the show, not to me, not to Aimee, but for the show, Chit-Chattin with Becca. If you need our address, you can direct message me on the Facebook and I will give it to you. If you send us a postcard, and I'll read it aloud on the show. And the postcard can be anything. It can be just a comment about the show. It can be something that you want to say. It can just be a hey. It could be a recipe, which would be fun. Any of the folks that like to cook, if you want to send us in a recipe, we'll read it aloud. We may chit chat about that. But there are lots of fun things that you might get in return. I might send you something. I might even send you something as cute as a postcard with Little's face on it. This is an actual postcard that I created through an app. That is a picture that I took of Little. So you might get a postcard back in the mail specifically from Little. So if you send us a postcard, we'll read it. And we need to support the post office right now. So, you might get there's also a couple of other fun things that I got coming that'll be giveaway stuff. So, make sure that you send us a postcard. The other thing that I wanted to share with y'all today is I have an issue with flashlights. I love flashlights. And so I have currently probably, 25. So Aimee is an enabler, and she had to go to the UPS store today to print something off because we don't have a printer here at the house, and everybody works from home now. So she is an enabler and brought me home this. That is a flashlight, but also a lantern. How cute is that? I mean, that's ridiculous. So she is an enabler. We're just going to go ahead and say it right now. But she did bring this to me, and it's adorable, and I love it. So those are the two things that I wanted to talk about first. So let's go ahead and get into the show. We've got a great guest here who is going to, let me see if I can't get him now. This is live. There will be technical difficulties. Are adding my friend Roy, who is, he is a web.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Thanks for having me.
For sure. I'm so excited to have you. Roy is a local weather dude who has a great Facebook page called Ponder on Weather, PFW. If you aren't following him, you should follow him because it's fantastic and his local is great. So, Roy, do you want to give us a forecast?
Yeah, just a quick forecast. Man, it's hot, right? There's no two ways about it. But relief is in sight. We've got the high pressure. It's actually going to retrograde back out west starting tomorrow. It's going to create what they call a little thermo trough down south around DFW southward. All that really is a wind shift. So places like DFW South will be 100 or above. Places north of that will be a little bit less than that. But the cool thing is we do have a cold front that's going to come down Sunday night. With that high pressure retrograding back west, that create a northwest flow. We'll have storms in Kansas and Colorado that will dive southward and create storms, probably about 60% coverage over the Metroplex after midnight on Sunday night. So that'll be a welcome relief. And that'll linger into Monday. And the cooler temperatures, the average high drops from 97, 96 starting on Monday. So the cool down is coming. And I don't really see any hundreds in the forecast all of next week. So we've got a lot of things to look forward to.
That's awesome because it was 88 degrees at 4 o'clock this morning for my run.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So I'm looking forward to a cool down for sure. Great.
Definitely.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the forecast. And if you want to drop a little great forecast in the comments, that would be awesome. And then, you know, anytime you want to come on the show and do a forecast at the beginning, that would be awesome.
Okay. All right. Excellent. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks. And tell Chris I said hey.
I will do. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
That was awesome. That was Ponder on Weather. So if you're not following his Facebook page, he is local. He does local Dallas weather. He also does hurricane stuff, and he does he'll do like the fall forecast for like the United States and stuff like that. And he's really awesome. So you totally should follow him. And we're gonna do an episode in a couple of weeks where with him, just with him on the show, and he's going to kind of give us, you know, what we have to look forward to starting in mid-September. So that'll be super awesome, and that sounds like a blast. So the next thing we were going to do, let me see if we have him around. If we don't have him around, then we're going to go to, and I'm not seeing him. So we were going to do a quick chicken check-in with our chicken folks out in Marble Falls, and I'm not seeing them on here. They were here a minute ago. So Jody and Matt, if y'all are on here, you want to pop back on. Let me see if you guys are here. We'll do a quick chicken check-in. There's Jody. I don't see that. Oh, wait, hold on. Wait a minute. We're learning as we go. So Jody.
Right. It looks like we got some chickens. We got some chickens. Oh my goodness, that's ridiculous.
But I'm gonna tell you what, there ain't nothing like looking at a good chicken. So hold on. I think we got something else happening here. Hold on just a second. We got somebody else to bring on camera, and we're probably gonna have just the same amount of problems as we do with the audio, but it is what it is. We'll try them again. Hold on. Let's see. Well, I don't know. We tried. Huh. Wait. Hold up. Yeah, I don't know. We were trying to bring one other person on before before we move on to our next thing, but we can't. Hold on just a second. There it is. Hold on. Here we go. Hold on. Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Lori, I don't know what's happening, but we'll try it again. Yeah, for some reason it won't let you on here, Lori. I don't know why it's not. We were gonna do a little Patrick update, but for some reason it's not adding Lori to the show. So we'll move on. We'll move on. It's a live show. We're gonna have problems. So we'll move on and we'll do a Patrick update next time once we figure out what is the issue with the audio and stuff like that. We may do it in a completely different way the next time instead of the Facebook Live. I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's just episode 1, right? We do whatever we want. So now we're going to get right into, we got 20 minutes left. And I think that 20 minutes is an adequate time to chat with Miss Aimee Francis. We'll do a Q&A at the end. So we'll ask y'all if you've got questions. I'll try to follow along as we go in through here. But we're going to start with Aimee, and we're just going to kind of go through like Friday the 13th. There was a whole series, and recently, when was this that you watched the whole thing?
I'm not on the screen.
Well, you just have to lean over.
Oh, I thought we were pushing it back to where we would both be on it when
Here,
it was here.
hold on. There we go.
That's better.
Okay, so recently, Aimee watched all of the Friday the 13th movies in sequential order.
Yes.
Yeah, starting with the first one and going all the way to the end. And she had some critiques about the Friday the 13th movies, which are insightful, if you ask me. They're rather insightful. And we had a very long discussion about it while we were on vacation in Oklahoma, about what worked and what didn't work. So if you've never watched the Friday the 13th movies, this is a spoiler alert for you. We're going to talk about them all.
I'm glad you did that, because I was definitely going to say, if you haven't seen them,
We're gonna talk about
stuff,
all of them. So please start. Amy's gonna start. So the first one, we'll talk about the first one.
Well, I think first, when you think about Friday the 13th, you have to think about the movie, the very first movie, versus the franchise, right? So you have to think about the fact that there are, gazillions of Friday the 13th, not just the very, very first Friday the 13th movie. But also agree that we should talk about the first one first. And if I were to pick a favorite, it would be the first one.
I agree with you. The first one, I didn't really like the franchise, except for, when we get to Jason in Space, which was just ridiculous. I mean, because that one is, if y'all haven't watched Jason in Space, it's just a load of ridiculousness.
It's not even called Friday the 13th Part
It's
10.
not.
It is literally Jason X.
It's Jason, I mean, it's
But we've
ridiculous.
always referred to it as Jason in Space.
I didn't even realize it was called Jason X, because I always call it Jason in Space, because it's like pigs in space. Y'all remember that from the Muppets.
It's pretty awesome.
It's ridiculous.
It's almost like the Spaceballs version of Friday the 13th.
I agree with that. I agree. It's very comical. So, fun fact, Kevin Bacon was in the first one. He sure was. He got killed too, didn't he?
Well, of course he did. But I think what the point that Jody brings up that I would like to make is, not only is Kevin Bacon in the first one, but it's introducing Kevin Bacon, right? So it's the first time we get to see Kevin Bacon. And the first time we realize about Kevin Bacon, which is pretty common in a lot of horror movies, right? Halloween introduced Jamie Lee. Nightmare on Elm Street introduced Johnny Depp, right? So this is kind of
didn't it?
Absolutely. It's kind of a common theme with horror movies, to find the up-and-coming famous person. And all three of those kind of, common horror movies did that. So, but yeah, absolutely. Kevin Bacon is in the first one. He dies with a right through the neck kind of thing. So yeah.
Does it come from the front or from the back?
From the back.
From the back, that's right.
Bed, yeah.
Oh, that's right, because he was laying in the bed.
Well, the sin of sex.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
of
for
course.
sure. They had sex, they had to die. If you smoke weed, drink beer, or have sex, you have to die.
Yeah, in general, it's just the
Yeah,
sin. So
it's the
you
sin.
can just
You have
kind
to,
of pop in
yeah.
any sin and death will come. And then one other thing I think to remember about the first one is that Jason is not the killer. So we have to
He's
keep that
not.
in mind. So
Yes.
absolutely, we introduced Kevin Bacon. Sean S. Cunningham is the director of the first one, and he doesn't really do a whole lot of other stuff. So he kind of managed to, I think, make enough money off of Friday the 13th to sort of continue on. But he doesn't direct any of the other ones, and he's kind of involved in Jason X. I'm pretty sure he's not the director of that one. But anyway, you wouldn't see Cunningham's name in the rest of the franchise there.
So now, how many Friday the 13th movies were there?
There were 10 if you count Jason X. Then you also have Freddy versus Jason, as
Yeah.
well as the 2009 remake.
Okay, so then there's 12.
If you want to count it as a franchise, I would say 12, yes.
Okay, so there's 12 movies. How many different actors played Jason?
A lot, but I wouldn't know how many. But we don't get our common Jason until Kane Hodder starts playing Jason in part 7. So that's when we get our kind of stunt dude that ends up being Jason from then on. So he almost, takes on the iconic role, wants to play Jason from then forward. So go
So
ahead.
let's talk about the first one. We want to both show y'all that we are wearing our Camp Crystal Lake t-shirts to support the first Friday the 13th movie. Let's see.
Just making sure Helen's just making a comment.
Yes, yes, for sure, Helen. It is pretty cool that they are all coming through horror movies, for sure, for sure. So let's talk about the first movie, and then we can kind of move into the direction that the franchise itself went into.
Agreed. So first film, Jason is not the killer. Jason is who we're avenging, right? So that's kind of an important thing. Jason was a child at the camp. The camp counselors were not watching him. They were off sinning in their various camp counselor teenager type ways, and he drowned in the lake. And then also there's no real explanation, but he seems to be special in some kind of a mental capacity as well as physical stature capacity, but we don't get a whole lot of explanation as to exactly what's going on there with young Jason.
Right, like why it was that he drowned, why it was that he couldn't swim.
What were his special
what
needs
were his special
exactly?
needs? Because he was a special needs kid.
And why a
Yeah.
special needs kid at a regular camp, 'cause
Right.
obviously he would need a little more care than the other ones. But none of that, that's almost putting a little too much thought into it. But
For sure.
the first one also introduces that concept of the final girl, which is a sort of a word or a term I've been hearing recently. The girl who survives at the end, right? So the one who survives and, I want to be in the sequel, if you want to bring up the Wes Craven Scream line. And she does. She does end up being in the sequel, but dies rather quickly, which is also kind of a common thing that can happen there with the final girl. So Jason doesn't become the killer until part 2.
Right, right. So in part 1, his mom is the killer. So she is avenging.
Mommy.
Yeah. Wait, it's creepy.
Yeah.
So Friday the 13th, I really enjoyed that movie. As horror movies go, I'm really into the camp. As campy as it can get, and I love me some campy horror movies. And that one I felt like really hit the campiness, in not being punny, but kind of because it was at a camp. I know, right? And so it really kind of hit home, especially with the end where you're like, whoa, Jason's not the killer, it's his mom. His mom is actually avenging, and she is creepy. So I guess we could move right into the second one.
We can, but I think real quick before we do, just entire franchise-wise, we have to talk about the fact that these particular horror movies, Friday the 13th, which kind of comes on the curtails of Halloween, if you will, are some of the first first-person killer horror movies, point-of-view horror movies, if you will. But basically, in these movies, you are the killer because the camera is the killer. So you see everything from the killer's point of view when it comes to kill scenes. So that's important. Now, they do say the very first movie that did that was a movie called Peeping Tom, which came out in like 1960, something like that. But it's a little bit for me as a stretch because in that particular movie, the killer is filming himself. Like that's kind of his gig, is that he wants to, see these people in that and then watch it later. Whereas these movies are just putting you as the first person killer, so you get the best view of each kill scene, if
Right,
you
so
will.
like in Halloween when you're actually in the
You're in
mask
the
and
mask
you're actually looking
and you
through.
see
But
through.
we have to stay on target.
We do. So
So
part two, we are Jason now, and Jason is not only avenging himself, right? So he is also after more camp counselors, not the same ones, obviously. It's just camp counselors in general, as well as avenging his mother's death, right? Because Final Girl kills mom in the first one, and now we don't have a hockey mask yet. So if you think of the iconic Jason with the hockey mask, and that's sort of how you picture Jason, that's not going to be the case in part two. He's got like a burlap sack with only kind of one eye, because really only one seems to be, kind of fully functional, if you will.
she just did her best Popeye impersonation, by the way.
Yeah,
That's her best Popeye
yeah.
impersonation.
So
It was
burlap
pretty
sack,
fantastic.
Jason, really in part two. And other than that, it's really just a remake of the first movie, right? Which they all are.
Yeah.
Part three, we get the hockey mask. So in part three, he actually picks up the hockey mask and moves forward from there.
In part two, are they still at a camp?
Oh, yes.
Are they
most
still at
definitely.
Camp Crystal Lake?
Oh, yes. They always
Okay.
come back to Camp
All right.
Crystal Lake.
And he's just like all of a sudden a grown man. Like he goes from like a little baby boy
We
into
have
like
this
a grown
weird
man right
final
quick.
girl scene,
Yeah.
with her sort of being pulled down in a canoe or a John boat type situation, and then she does come back in the next one and is killed by the grown version of Jason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're going into, so that was part one, part two, let's go into part three.
Yeah, and 2 and 3 have the same director, which is kind of interesting. Minor is his last name, and
wrote notes.
he also directed H2O, which I find kind of interesting, and didn't really
What is
go down this
H2O?
rabbit. Halloween H2O, so the remake when we actually bring back Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, which really is going to have to be a whole nother episode.
That's another episode. We can do a
Also
lot of
House,
stuff on the Halloweens.
the one with the kind of finger deal, and Lake Placid. So he did 2 and 3.
Okay, can we just stop for a second?
We can.
If y'all haven't watched Lake Placid, you should. Because Betty White's in it.
Betty White is in it.
Betty White is in Lake Placid.
And she's really, and it's just a movie about sarcasm, which if
It really is.
you have to go into.
You gotta watch that one. Okay, let's move on.
So part 4, which is, if you ever, want to just watch one, I think everyone should see one. If you want to skip pretty much everything else, you ought to at least give part 4 a try, and for a lot of reasons. First of all, it introduces this interesting character of Tommy Jarvis, who in part 4 is actually played by Corey Feldman. So you may or may not be a Feldman fan, but he's pretty decent in this. It's pre-Gremlins, it's pre the other Corey, hopefully it's pre-drugs, as he's pretty young. But it's an interesting character, this Jarvis fellow, who is a kind of a horror special effects freak, if you will. He enjoys making masks and things like that, so he's kind of into that kind of thing. And in that way, he's sort of tricks Jason into thinking he is baby Jason, and quote unquote kills Jason at the end. But I think the
Okay. What?
Yeah, he turns himself into what baby Jason would have looked like, the one that kind of comes up out of the John boat,
Yeah.
by somehow in, a very small amount of time, which, time is sort of, I guess you can suspend it, if you will, in horror movies, somehow is able to sort of cut his hair bald and sort of look like baby Jason does, and then kind of tries to talk like younger Jason in order to bring Jason back down, and then kills him, quote unquote.
So, and Jason just believes that that's him as a young kid?
Well, it kind of gets confused.
I haven't seen all of it.
We have
So
to
he's
remember that
confused.
Jason is special needs as an adult as well.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess so. So
And dead.
And dead, because I mean, we really need to talk about the fact that Jason is somehow supernatural because he's dead, but he's walking around killing people.
That is true. That is
So-
true. So then also in part 4, which I think is the most important reason for anyone to watch it, is that Crispin Glover is in it as a
He's so
little
weird.
baby boy.
He's so weird.
And he has got some great kill scenes in it. It's got a weird dancing scene with Crispin Glover that's rather worth your time. But it's definitely important because it introduces the Tommy Jarvis character, who then shows up in the next 3-4 episodes of the series itself. So Tommy becomes a kind of iconic character there in the middle of the franchise.
So it's strange that this is a strange direction that this whole franchise is going in. I mean, it's like, Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, so
Because it goes into a really strange direction. Like,
so then part 5, we get Tommy Jarvis all grown up and he's institutionalized, right? So this killing of Jason has caused him to, not have the best memories and dreams, and his family all got killed pretty much in it, and so he's institutionalized. But the most thing to remember is that part 5, Jason is not the killer. So there's only 2 movies that Jason is actually not the killer in, which is part 1, when it's actually the mom, which is the mistake that Drew Barrymore makes in the beginning of Scream, right? When he says, who's the, killer in Friday the 13th? She says, Jason, and they, hey, you gotta die, because it was really Jason's mom. Mrs. Voorhees, if you will. But yeah, part 5 is a strange copycat killer. And to be honest, of all of the movies in it, I think I hate it the most. It is awful. It's got some really, really bad acting, not that they don't all have it, but it has that also strange character that people like to do of the fat kid who is just constantly eating. So he's and covered in chocolate and stuff, like, in order to be
Yeah, I
fat,
hate
you
that.
must just constantly be shoving food into your mouth. So, but he dies, and then his, father that he never had absolutely any idea he even had, decides to avenge this kid that he never wanted to be involved in his life, and pretends to be Jason, and then kills everyone. Which of course just sends Tommy Jarvis into yet another, spiral of mental issues. And in the next movie, which I guess is 6, which you can, the problem with these is we get 4, 5, which is the reason I have my notes.
She has
4
notes.
is really referred to as the final chapter, and that's the one where Corey kills him. 5 is called A New Beginning, which is the copycat killer. 6 is called Jason Lives, so we don't even, it doesn't even say 6. And this is when Tommy goes and tries to kill Jason in the cemetery. So he digs Jason up. He thinks that if he puts this big piece of metal, almost like a rebar, through Jason's heart, that he's going to kill him forever. And he's not going to be able to reincarnate. But instead, when he does this, suddenly a storm occurs, which causes lightning to hit the piece of rebar, which goes into Jason's heart, and he reincarnates through electricity. And this will not be the first time that Jason reincarnates through electricity. This is something that will happen more than once. So that's sort of the way that all happens. With that one, though, we do get the girl who was from V, who played one of the characters in V, and who ended up being a weird, married to the person who wrote the Urantia book. So strange kind of thing going on there.
So not everybody knows what the Urantia book is.
Well,
That's a whole nother episode, and we could talk about that later. But I didn't know what it was, and Aimee mentioned it to me once.
It's just kind of a cult thing. You can look
It's
up
weird.
The group of Urantia, but it's an interesting
Yeah.
version of some of our history, if you will. We'll
But
just leave it at
we'll
that.
just move on from the Urantia
and
book
so-
altogether.
So part
That's a whole
7.
other episode.
Part 7, and this is also part 6, Jason Lives, where we get the lightning that brings him back. The way that we figured out how to kind of kill Jason forever is to drown him in the lake. So basically get him all chained up, weight him down, put him in the lake. So if you've ever seen the fish tanks that have Jason in them that's kind of suspended, that's why. Because we're like, hey, he never dies, but let's pop him in the lake. He can't move
Let's
around.
just pop him there.
And
We're
he'll
gonna
just
pop him
stay
in the
there.
lake.
It's his
Yeah.
lake anyway, right? So
Yeah,
he'll just
for
hang out
sure.
there, and
For
surely
sure.
he'll never be able to get out of these chains.
He
right?
can't. I mean,
And
he's not
so-
supernatural that comes back to life just when
No, never. So
Well,
this
just
is
put him
the
in the
first
lake.
time he gets weighted and put in the lake, and then in the next one,
And he's like floating like this,
yes,
looking up.
but
Isn't that how he
weighted. One
is?
of the legs is weighted, and he's
Yeah.
chained up, pretty heavy chain. So then that's
ridiculous.
Jason
How
Lives.
ridiculous is that? Okay.
And then part 7 is New Blood. And then this one I think is important because it's the introduction of Kane Hodder. So Kane Hodder is really just a stuntman. Does lots of great stunt. Yes, V, exactly. V rocks.
V,
But yeah,
exactly,
we're on Friday the
exactly, V.
13th for now. But yeah, Jennifer Cook, I want to say is her name. She played Baby Elizabeth when
Oh.
Baby Elizabeth grew really,
Helen
really
says
fast.
a cardinal sin to gluttony.
Oh, yes, of course.
Of course. Of course.
course.
I didn't even think about that. Well,
I
Ladies, go
There
ahead.
you go.
See,
right.
this
So
is why Helen has she has a PhD.
Part 7, which they also call the New Blood, right? So if you're looking them up, that one's the New Blood. We get Kane Harder. We also, and he's a stuntman, right? So before this, he's not really necessarily an actor who just plays a character, but he will be other characters in the movie, and you usually get to see him die as well, which is kind of fun.
So he's Jason, but he's also
Jason,
other
but he
characters?
also gets killed by Jason. He's usually some sort of background character, like a cop or something like that, a person at a mental institution, and then he kind of gets killed as well. So it's kind of cool. If you can get his face, then you can recognize him. And in this one, Jason is kind of a zombie version of Jason, meaning that he seems to begin to deteriorate. So that we see a lot
This is
of
why
bones.
I don't like. This is why I don't like zombies.
We
They're
see
dirty.
a lot of bones and things like that on Kane Harder. And Kane Harder is a big guy. So from then on out, pretty much he will be Jason. So he does take on that role of Jason and continues on. In this one, which is kind of fun, Jason is brought back through telekinesis. So not just, hey, random bringing him back, and not an electricity through the heart kind of thing, but instead a person who has telekinetic powers unknowingly uses these powers near Crystal Lake, and this brings Jason back to life through
Just didn't even know.
telekinesis.
Was just like, hey, isn't this a nice lake? I'm gonna hang out here. I'm gonna be all telekinetic-ease, and I'm just gonna, oh gosh, look, there's somebody coming up out of the lake, and it's Jason, and now he's gonna start killing people.
So part 8,
That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
which really is just Jason Takes Manhattan, you know. So, I mean, once you get to part 8, you know, you're pretty much just, it's really just known as Jason Takes Manhattan, Jason Takes New York, however you want to put it. But at this point, Jason is no longer on Crystal Lake, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing. He moves
He's
on.
now in Manhattan.
Yeah, he moves
He's like,
on to
what up?
being
I'm Jason.
with us in the quote-unquote real world,
Yeah.
which I find kind of interesting, kind of like Predator Part 2. But in this one, he's also brought back through electricity, so he is still weighted down. Again, we decide to weight him down and pop him in the lake so that he won't harm anyone, but obviously, you know, he's going to come back. And then, you know, accidentally electricity brings him back, and he ends up on a boat, a senior trip boat that is going from, I guess, near Crystal Lake out to Manhattan. So first part of the movie is kind of but once you get to Manhattan, it's sort of 80s crazy horribleness.
Jody says Jason Takes Manhattan was her go-to movie for sleepovers in middle school.
Nice. Nice. It just takes him so freaking long to get to Manhattan, right? So I think you're waiting this whole movie going, good grief, are we ever going to get to Manhattan? But we do. We do end up getting to Manhattan. And then we get Jason 9, if you will, which is called Jason Goes to Hell Final Friday. And a lot of them like to say the word final as though, yeah, we're just going to stop this thing. But no, there's going to be 7 more movies, right? So Jason Goes to Hell Final Friday. I kind of liked this one a lot. I hadn't seen it before when I went through the franchise recently. I'd seen all the other ones. I hadn't seen this one. It's not even in my box set, so I had to kind of, I don't know, I had to look at my box set when I said that, but I did. My collection of movies that are over there.
She did. She has a box set.
I do. It's not there, so that might be part of the reason why I hadn't seen it, but I like this one a lot because they actually lure Jason into a cabin, right? So a FBI agent or a special ops woman decides to go to the cabin by herself. At first you're thinking, why on earth would this woman go to the cabin in Crystal Lake all by herself? Or what? And then of course she has to immediately get into the shower.
Immediately.
And so you're like, oh my God, not the shower.
Yeah.
You know, good grief. Are you some kind of an idiot? But then we find out she's some kind of cool special ops lady, naked lady, but still cool and special opsy. And so she lures him out into the middle of a group of lots of other special op type FBI, whatever you will, and they kill Jason. They actually trap him and kill him. And then he is taken to the morgue where for some reason his heart is black and still beating.
It's because he's supernatural.
Right. And this actually establishes the supernatural side of Jason, which is kind of cool. So in this movie, they actually, and actually Halloween does this as well. There's eventually a version or one of the movies that somehow tries to explain why this person doesn't die, what kind of supernatural things, are going on in the life of this person, the family typically of this person that makes them supernatural. So, but what I like about this one is, and Kane Hodder still plays Jason when he looks like Jason. He's still one of the guys at the morgue, so it's great fun to watch him die.
It's great fun to watch him die.
Jason actually skips bodies in this one. So
that might be a quote on the back of a postcard if you get one.
So it goes from person to person. So even though it is still Jason killing everyone because he is embodying other bodies, you actually get to see about 4 or 5, somewhere in that range, different quote unquote Jasons. And then he gets killed, he pops into a different body, he gets killed, pops into a different body, and it's kind of fun. And that's when we come to this kind of thing where Jason is somehow, his family, is a reason why he can come back to life, and he can only be killed with this magical dagger. And so he's killed with said magical dagger, and then in turn gets drugged to hell, which is why it's Jason Goes to Hell. So
he gets drugged to hell.
Yeah,
he
gets
drugged
down into the ground and goes to hell. And also a good thing to, because I know Leslie Jordan has been kind of entertaining us through this pandemic. Leslie Jordan is a very, very young in this one, and has a pretty decent kill scene in it. So
if y'all aren't following Leslie Jordan on the Instagrams, you really should be, because he is hilarity.
So, that's really it, other than Jason in Space, which to me, the main thing to talk about Jason in Space is it's a parody of itself. It is a parody of, it laughs at itself really well. Jason, it's in the future, and he is somehow cryogenically frozen, comes back to life on a spaceship, starts trying to kill people. But the best thing about Jason X, and if you haven't seen it, just this one scene is worth it, other than the smashy face cryogenic frozen girl. That's a pretty cool kill scene. But they lure him through a hologram of 70s girls, like laying out a picnic, not wearing shirts, and smoking weed. So that's how they get him to, like, not, mess with the people who are on the spaceship,
so bad.
And instead go after this hologram. And then he's, trying to kill the girls, but it's a hologram. So it's pretty hilarious.
And there's one point in Jason in Space where he gets smashed up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like some sort of Terminator thing where all the parts of him come all back together and make him again.
Yeah, he's supernatural.
I was like, what the hell is going on?
Then you do get Freddy versus Jason, right? So good
you do,
fun there.
You do.
Good
I don't care for Freddy and his slashiness, though.
To be
I'm
honest,
really
Friday the 13th never necessarily scared me. Freddy Krueger, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, scared the behuja out of me. So that one was a scary one for me. So, but anyway, Freddy versus Jason is fun. You have that whole Freddy is a dream. So how could he actually kill Jason? But Jason can't die. So how can Jason be killed?
Right.
But Freddy can't die because he's a dream.
Right.
It's great fun, and lots of teenagers get killed in the process, obviously. So that's always good. And then there's the 2009 remake, which most people would probably like to forget. I actually enjoyed it.
I thought it wasn't bad.
I had a good time with it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It reminded me a lot of 2 and 3. It had some elements of lots of different movies, sort of that, Jason has a head of his mother in a cabin somewhere, that he's sort of worshiping kind of stuff from some of the originals. So I thought it played a fine homage to it, but will you what you will with remakes. I still thought it was a good time.
I think you have to think about all of these Jason movies. Like, it's ridiculous. It's kind of like the Final Destination movies, where they just keep telling you over and over again, this is the last time. We're not going to make another one of these. Like, this is it, you guys. You're going to have to come watch this movie because this is the last Final Destination movie we're going to make, yada, yada, yada. And they make it. Well, you get all hyped up, and we go, and we're like, yeah. And then, 2 years later, hey, we made another Final Destination movie. And I kind of feel the same way about the Jason movies. And then they kind of reach a little bit for something to talk about, in the movie. But I think that if you just take it for what it is, which is absolute ridiculousness and campiness, then it kind of It kind of works.
Well, and Helen is bringing up the references to Beowulf and the Hand of Grendel. So, yeah, good stuff there. And all of this can be certainly come back to, some of your Iliad and all that kind of, fun stuff. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
absolutely classic
Yep.
stuff of, people not being able to die and just sort of coming after us. But, really, he's just paying us back for those sins, right? So, he's the reason you want to be scared of him is that, you lied to your parents, you went out and got drunk, you had sex, you're doing drugs, you're doing something that is bad, and Jason will ultimately punish you for it.
So if y'all have, Betty White does have one of the most diverse resumes of anyone in Hollywood. I will 100% agree with that. If you have questions for Aimee, we're here for a little question and answer, a little Q&A, if you will. So if you have questions with Aimee, just pop them in the comment section right quick, and we'll see if we get any, or any comments or anything that you'd like to say. And then we have gone over our time, so I will close it out kind of quick. But does anybody have any questions that they wanna ask? And we'll sit here. We'll just kind of look through. Jody says hilariousness because she is hilarious. Sounds like last night. Hey-o! So.
Well, Jason's coming for you and the
Yeah,
chicken. Or maybe we
Jason's
should just
gonna
say
come
the
get
bad
you.
chicken. What's the bad chicken's name? John?
Jerry.
Jerry. Yeah, Jerry. Jerry's coming for you. Yeah.
Nobody likes Jerry. Nobody likes that
yeah.
chicken. And it's too bad that we had. Okay. Truth be known, the filmmaker had a teenage daughter and wanted to show her what happened when she drank, did drugs, and had sex.
Now, is that truth or just your take on Mr. Cunningham, the original director there?
How many flashlights do you
It's
own?
like 28.
Yeah,
30.
like literally 28. So when we recently went to our cabin, that cabin that we went to in Oklahoma, recently, I say recently, it was in April that we went up to that cabin. I took 8 flashlights with me because that apparently is how many flashlights I needed for a cabin trip. But I have them stashed throughout the house. It's ridiculous. I might have a problem, but we're not going to talk about that. And Aimee is an enabler. So
She needed a little sussy.
apparently I needed a little surprise, which we call them sussies because it's adorable. So that's how many flashlights I do. I can't count them up. I could find them all and put them all and take a picture, but I don't know. I don't know.
Ooh, that's a tough one. So my parents, as far as movies went, I guess they would probably want me to say that my first horror movie was Death on the Nile. I was about 6. I wanted to see Grease, I think, but instead, so I was about 6 or 7. But instead, they took me to see Death on the Nile at Lowe's. It's not really a horror movie, but for some ungodly reason, I then had dreams that a tall man and a short man, sort of a melodramatic type comedy type characters with knives, were coming after me. And so, of course, wanted to sleep in bed with my parents and things of that nature. So from that moment forward, I was not allowed to see any type of, and this was really just a suspense movie. It was Agatha Christie, for goodness sake. So from that moment forward, I was not allowed to see any horror movies of any kind, including Poltergeist, which I really, really wanted to see, but was not allowed to. Probably a good idea on Mom and Dad's part on that one, since it did kind of go into a lot of kids' fears of their toys and trees outside and things like that. But yeah, so I guess once I started getting in that 16 to 17-year-old age where rated R movies were okay, because I was also restricted on those unless Mom okayed them, would be when I started. And I didn't see Nightmare on Elm Street until I was at home, so it wasn't something I could have seen at the theater, so I wouldn't have been old enough at that time. But that one scared me pretty good.
So which one was your just a proper horror movie, not Death on the Nile, but proper horror movie? What was the very first one you ever saw?
I don't
Do you
think
even
I
remember?
could. Yeah, I mean, it might even be Psycho, which if you're really gonna pop in, what's the first slasher movie? That would probably be it. So, it could have been The Birds, maybe. That might be one that I would have seen at a younger age and would have been allowed to see at a younger age, or something. Probably something Hitchcocky, but really, I don't think I could pinpoint that one down.
Yep. Let's see what we got. Another question here. Yes, Janet. Yes, she says just my take on it. All teenagers getting killed for their sins, for sure, for sure.
Right.
What is Bill's current location? I will tell you. They're all right over here. So, I mean, literally, she's got here. I'll show you. Bill's current location is one. All four of them are over there. So that's Bill's current location. Maybe that'll be part of our show, as we're just talking about what Bill's current location is. Any other questions? We got a little Q&A time, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Anything else? Going once, going twice. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us on our very first episode of Chit Chatting with Becca. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had a lot of fun too. I hope you learned a little something about campiness and the campiness of the
Well, we're getting close to October, guys. So
we are. So we're getting close to Halloween,
Yeah.
and we may not be able to actually celebrate Halloween with one another, but we can watch some scary movies. So, so we'll do that. We'll figure out what the audio was. Again, this is a live show, so who knows what's going to happen, but we'll figure out what was going on with the audio, and then we'll move from there. So look for our next episode. It will be next week. We're gonna figure the audio. We're gonna have to figure the audio out, because it is gonna be our special guest for that will be Matt and Jody, and we'll just be checking out their chickens and their goats, and we'll hanging out with them and chit chatting with them for a little bit. Helen wants to know what your favorite horror.
It's gonna have to be a tie, because I've got to have my slasher along with an actual really scary movie. But a Halloween and an American Werewolf in London would be my top two there. Halloween, just in general, much better franchise if you ask me.
I agree with that.
Than the Friday the 13th ones, but again, a whole nother episode there. And then an American Werewolf in London. I mean, Landis goes from comedy to horror, and if you really think about horror and comedy, they're very, very similar. You have it should be a shorter film. It shouldn't be a 2-hour long film. You're in that hour and a half. You are constantly trying to scare someone or constantly trying to make someone laugh. So anytime I can get a director that realizes that those two genres are similar and can kind of intertwine it so that you're laughing at the fact that someone is getting killed, hey, I just love it. So, and the effects, you've never seen
And
anything
that one
like
is,
that.
I mean, like we could, okay, so we're just going to keep going here, because I love that movie. There's something so scary about him changing into the werewolf, and and comical at the same time. And the way they were able to get that across was brilliant. That was really brilliant.
Agreed.
And
And then Jack, of course,
and
in all
Jack,
of his stages
yeah, the
of
stages
decay.
of, yeah, for sure, for sure. And if you haven't watched that movie in a while, it's probably something that you may want to revisit, just
It's
because
slow. Keep that in mind.
it is
So,
slow,
it's
but
not going to be action, 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 action. It's slow,
but
and
it's good.
It's ultimately
But
a
it's
love story,
really good. I mean, and it is ultimately a love story, isn't it?
as is Terminator.
Uh, as is Terminator is a love
It
story.
is a love story.
It sure is. We could just do this forever, but we gotta go. So we were trying to keep it to 30 minutes, but we go over because it is a live show. So anyway, any other questions before we head out? Nada. Okay, again, thank you so much to everybody who watched the show. We had a blast. This was a lot of fun. Remember, write into the show, and we'll send you, well, I mean, we'll read your comments and all of that questions and all of that stuff in your postcards on the air. If you want to send us recipes, we'll read those. And don't forget, you might get something special like a postcard with Little's face on it, or
And
other
true,
things.
True, Helen, as would be a roller coaster ride, right? So that same kind
Yeah.
of thing where you're laughing and screaming all at the same time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure. So, so we'll see you next time. I hope y'all had a good time. And don't forget, if you need a flashlight, then you should always keep one by your side. So, have a great day. Bye.